The task was to turn this drawing that I made using Blender into a finished pergola. Traveling all the way to Maine from Kentucky, I reached the site where Pele had been working for the past few days, greeted enthusiastically by his dog, Toast. He had already flattened the area and was positioning the foundation tubes to be filled with concrete. In Maine, these tubes must be set 4 feet underground. They had to be positioned exactly where the posts were. The red cedar wood we had ordered was stacked at the landscaping shop where Pele worked. These were the profiles the customer finally decided on, so we made templates using my laser engraver at home, and immediately got to work cutting the profiles onto the ends of each board. We were able to do 3 at a time on the sawhorse, marking them, then rough cutting them with a jigsaw. We then clamped the templates back on. And using a router with a straight bit, cleaned the edge, making them all exactly alike. We took another router with a small roundover to ease the edges to match the rest of the planks. Within a couple of hours, we had completed the ends of all the rafters and struts. We clamped all the rafters together and marked where they would meet the struts. Using a circular saw, we cut lines to make the mortises that would lap the rafters onto the struts. We then made several kerf cuts in order to make the chiseling easy. The pieces came out quickly, all at the same depth, and we just had to scrape the bottom to make it perfectly flat. We repeated the process on the rafters so that they would lap perfectly onto the struts. Then came the task of mortising all the rafters to hold the many strapping boards that would make the grid. We flipped them over all at once and proceeded to make the measurements. Pele worked from the center out to make all the cuts equidistant. After all the cuts were made, we laid out the whole roof onto the shop floor to check and see if everything would come together. And it did. Straps came in 6-inch widths, so we had to rip them all in half. And run them over the router with the small roundover bit in order to ease the edges. We were short 1 piece, which we had to go and buy. The customer wanted a weathered look on the wood, so we used this product that would make the wood gray. One box made 5 gallons of solution, just enough for the project. It mixes with water and effectively makes the wood gray in a matter of minutes when applied. Using a sprayer, we laid out all the strapping boards on the driveway and proceeded to spray all the boards with the solution. Now it was time to take the supporting structure apart and spray everything with the solution. This time lapse shows the change of coloring. It started to rain, but we didn't worry because the instructions said that rain will actually help the aging process.
Well, the sun's back out.
Toast was always there to motivate us and make sure we didn't slough off.
Where Pele go?
She did allow Pele to have a little fun at times, though.
Where's Pele?
The next day, we had decided to seal the wood with this oil-based product. I did a test to see what it would look like, and behold, it brought the wood to life. So we proceeded to spray all the boards with the sealer. I would spray it on thick, then brush it in using this brush. Then I applied plenty of sealer to the end grain of the wood. Next morning, dew had covered all the wood, but it did not penetrate. The sealer worked. It was now time to load everything up and take it to the site. Fortunately, Pele had access to some heavy machinery, which made the loading easier. With everything strapped down good, we finally left to the site, which was about 15 miles away. The first thing we had to do is cut the 8x8 pressure-treated posts and insert them into the sleeves of the anchors. They were a tight fit, so we had to plane the ends and literally pound them into the sleeves.
That's it.
Each post had to be positioned and plumbed straight before we bolted them onto the sleeves. Once in place, we applied the supporting struts and then positioned the rafters. The lap joints were very tight, but everything was exact, thanks to careful planning. Then came the strapping boards. Since it took two lengths to span across the pergola, we decided to join them in the middle with steel braces that we painted black. Now it was time to wrap all the posts with cedar wood to make the finished column. We started by covering all the faces with wide boards. Each post had 28 pieces that needed to be applied to complete the finished column. We knew that this would be the most painstaking task. All the corners were mitered so that no end grain would show. Then we sanded it all smooth. I wanted to put one last application of the weathering compound on the posts, since we had not sealed them with the oil. This would hide any cuts and edges that were still fresh. We were visited by a curious falcon who seemed intrigued by the structure. He was maybe interested in the prospect of a new perch, or even a nesting site.
Got some food, got some bread or something. That'd be a good picture.
Be good to look this way.
I waited until he was gone before I started to apply the final coat of oil sealer to the posts. I sprayed on a heavy coat, then brushed it in by hand. After 7 days of hard work, the pergola was completed. I returned home, and in the following days, Pele and his landscaping crew built a beautiful patio under the pergola, complete with electricity, foliage, and plant wells for the vines to grow from.